Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of Inspected Goals for the new season, pod where we try and improve our FPL play through a more analytical approach. Joined by Luke here today, who isn't on my screen, who I'm just going to bring up. Apologies about that. Give me just 2 seconds. Luke's gone invisible on us.
I was about to interrupt you and say I've got you on YouTube on the back.
Yeah,
and
no problem. It'll take 2 seconds. Sorry about that.
I can understand wanting to hide this face, but
yeah, he's coming here. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry now. What's going on here? Sorry now, guys. Apologies.
it's all right.
I
can whistle. Someone in the chat has said, "Where plank rank?"
Where plank rank? Plank rank, I guess, isn't coming back because the reason that I kind of brought that out was for an EV X Mins rank, which we didn't have on review at the time, and since then that's been brought back. So I guess there's not really a need for it. There we land. Luke is here.
Hey.
He should be coming up for you now, guys. Apologies about that. We can actually blame Luke for it though, because he was the one who was actually late to.
I take full responsibility.
So, yeah, just quick before we get into the chat for today. Yeah, there's Luke. Okay, great. We can see him. He's arrived. Just a big thank you, I suppose. First of all, just generally towards the feedback and the responses and the engagement with the pod since I've come on has been amazing. Obviously, a bit kind of, I guess, nervous in some ways, I suppose. A new kind of thing for me. I'm just a nerd who plays FPL, so it's been really, really enjoyable for me, but also kind of been really positive feedback, and people seem to be at least somewhat enjoying it and taking something from it. So that's really, really nice. Further to that, and kind of in line with that, the X-Mins kind of forums that I posted on the Inspected Goals Twitter earlier on in the week, feedback was amazing on that. We're going to get into that today. That's going to be kind of one of the main parts of the pod, talking about X-Mins and things like that, and the feedback on that and kind of the engagement with that was amazing. Over 100 responses, which is really, really good, especially when it's something that, to be honest, is a bit kind of dull in one sense, that it's just predicting X-Mins.
It's very dull. It's very dull, but it has to be done.
Yeah. And yeah, so before we even get into that, Luke, how's kind of your, I guess, planning going generally? Any kind of major changes over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm just like, and I've always been this way. I just constantly tinker and change and swap people around. Like, for me, where the deadline is in terms of the season starting, like, if that was just randomly interjected at any point, my team could be like up to 10 players different at any point, depending on when that would happen. So that's no change, really. In fact, I think there's probably only one season, maybe 2 seasons ago, I think was the one where pretty much we all just had the identical team and we ended up just burning transfers, where it's just like the biggest no-brainer team of all time, and you literally could have like Saka, like everyone, if you know what I mean, from the very beginning. Apart from that season, it's just normal for me. So my team's changed a lot, and at the moment it feels very risky, the team I've got. So whether I'll go with that, I don't know, because that's kind of bringing out my old roots again, and that doesn't go so well usually when we try that. So I'm hoping that some of this discussion will bring me back the other way, or we'll see on a few players, because quite a lot of these guys are actually in my team, and the fact that these players are the ones that have been listed, do you know what their X-minute is, and like the majority are in my team, should be a massive warning sign for me. So let's see.
I don't think so necessarily. I mean, players like say Alvarez last season, who you had, I know earlier on in the season you ended up with about 300 million team value from kind of being on board with that early. I don't think because that their minutes are a little bit lower or a bit debatable or is a massive issue. I think you should be fine, so long as, I guess, it's not players that are just bad. Which we might get into at some stage for some of them, but we'll see. I think we're going to try and keep things kind of short and to the point and kind of punch through each player, because there's so many that we could talk about. The actual the forms that I put out earlier on in the week, I mean, I picked about 7 players on there that I thought were somewhat relevant. There's way more that we could talk about, but I don't want to be here for 4 hours. I know, Luke, you've got a little bit of data kind of outside of that you've kind of brought in today, which is amazing. Some stuff on some of the players there, which we'll get into as well. And yeah, I guess we'll start off with Nkunku's up first. And so let me just move over here. So it'll be a similar structure for most of the players that we talk about today. Hopefully everything's kind of relatively visible. I'm going to read through it as well, because I guess, it's nice to do that anyway, especially for people listening. So we have the pie chart here, which is actually from the responses that you guys submitted. And again, thanks so much for that. Worked really, really nicely for us. So in Nkunku, we have, we have 5-minute kind of intervals for each players. And we're looking at kind of between, 20, 30, to 20%, 25% around kind of between 75 and 80 minutes, and about 35% between 71 and 75. So that was kind of the feedback on there. If the writing's a little bit small or anything, just maybe pop a message into the chat if it is, and I can kind of make it a little bit bigger. But yeah, I'm reading through it anyway. So really the kind of consensus from that was between 70 and 80 minutes for game week 1 only. Luke, anything kind of you want to add on that, or your thoughts on that?
Well, this is the first time I'm seeing it. I didn't click on it before, and yeah, so I suppose that's maybe a little bit surprising. I think the defaults when I checked earlier today was 76 minutes for Nkunku, right? So maybe shouldn't be that surprised because it's within that sort of almost 5-minute window there.
Yeah.
It starts decaying on review, so 76, 72, 69, 68, 68, but that's normal if anyone's used to using it. So I just kind of looked at, we've got below on that screen the FBref, his history, and I just thought there were some things to note, like how relevant these things can be further into someone's career and under different circumstances. I'm not sure. So it's more just to present the information really, and then people could maybe didn't think about it or didn't use it. And I suppose a lot of this stuff really will go into what review uses to make those minutes in the first place, right? It uses probably a lot of this data and more recent data as well. But something that jump out to me. So last season for Nkunku, he was only 443 minutes that he played. Now, obviously, we know that was heavily impacted by the fact he had a major injury. Only 11 appearances and 2 starts in the league. Now, normally that isn't the kind of player you probably want to be going into the season with. He did sub on 9 times. He had 44 minutes per app overall, so that includes the subs, and he had 70 minutes per start. I think that one's slightly more encouraging. I know it was only 2 starts. It's extremely small sample, but in the 2 starts, he did manage 70. So a little bit more encouraging. Over the last 4 seasons, 1,738 minutes over the last 4 seasons is the average. And you can see there, if you've got the screen, you've got 443 last, 189 before, jumps up to that really good season of 2,700 minutes. And then you've got 1,819 again. So I think when you look at that, you've got how many times there are 1,8 and 1,9. You've got that appearing sort of 3 times in the past 5 years. So that maybe that is kind of where we should expect it to be. I know there's the element of, he's young, he's getting into the team, etc. That sort of 21-22 season was definitely his breakthrough. But is that the outlier? Are we is it around the sort of 2,000 minutes mark that we should expect from Nkunku? I don't know. He's certainly capable of doing more, as we can see before, but he hasn't really actually ever shown it outside of that one season.
Yeah.
In that one season, incidentally, right? So he got 30. This is just in the league. So he started 31 of the 34 games, and he subbed on in the other 3 games. So he played every single game, and he came on in the 46th minute twice and the 58th minute, so nearly at half time. So that season he was unreal.
Yeah. Every
other season, like I'm saying, it looks a bit dodgy.
Yeah, you do have some kind of injury proneness in there, I guess, a little bit. And I think, to be fair, he has had a really good preseason. I know there's a message in the chat there that kind of his average in his last couple of seasons at Leipzig are around 85, 84, 88, which is really, really nice kind of minutes per start. So, sorry, yeah, I'm probably doing the same as well. But really, really nice to see at least that, I guess, when available and when he's starting games, he's doing well.
Yeah, in 21-22, exactly. He had 82 minutes I calculated it to be per start, and I'm not counting the extra time and stuff.
Yeah,
I made. So it's certainly there and it's capable, and we've obviously got the fact that now in pre-season he seems to be playing a lot of the minutes. I don't think there's any doubt around his start, and we can sort of get to the point where when he is playing, even last season when he was basically being worked back in and he was injured, he was managing 70, and historically he was managing 80. So I think he is a player that's capable of doing that. And that probably seems about right to me. I don't really know what else to say. I don't know whether we can expect to see a season where he jumps back up to making sort of 31 starts.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. He's definitely got the quality, right? I do believe that injury is probably the only thing that's prevented. You could say that's just development, and therefore he should be at that point already or continued at that point. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. I don't know if anyone else thinks that, is that an outlier? Is he going to go back? Do we expect that? No one really knows on that.
I think because he's just so good. I think that really stands to him, like that he's just so much better than any of his competition. Obviously, like Palmer's amazing, but regardless of that, there's nobody else who's really any good at Chelsea who plays in those positions, right? He's had a really good preseason, played a lot of minutes in there, which is really, really good. I know there was a quote that came out a couple of weeks ago that said, "Oh, I'm not 100% fully fit." I think that was just kind of, a player to say, "No, I'm trying to get better and better and better." He has had some injuries, so I guess that is kind of problematic, and I do think that when we're kind of inputting any X-Mins into a solver, for example, we should be a little bit harsher on his decay further down the line. That being said, for like this game week and like the next couple of weeks, I think his minutes are quite high. If he gets injured, then they're going to be terrible and we're going to sell him, and he might get injured. But I think when he's fit, he's going to play, and he's going to play a lot of the minutes, and he's really, really good at football. I think he's just a really good pick. Important to note as well, guys, just on any of the pie charts that are coming up here, this was just kind of game week 1 only. So that maybe, if some people maybe misunderstood that could kind of skew the results, anybody going like really, really low, or else maybe they don't think he's going to start. It could be kind of people saying, I think Nkunku's going to play on average 60 to 65 minutes or 55 to 60 minutes over the season, which might actually be a reasonable assumption, as you mentioned there. Like, is he going to get 30 starts? Probably not, right? But for game week 1, I think his minutes are really high, and even game week 2 and 3, and then kind of start to decay a little bit harsher throughout the horizon.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think we come to a common consensus there that it's probably, we're happy with around sort of the 70 to 80 for one, and then probably needs some sort of element of decay, just given that history of not really very often making it beyond 20 starts now. But that's building in the injury, essentially. It's not saying that we don't think he'll start if he's available. We just think that there might therefore be some injury or something like that. People always said about Chelsea signing millions of players as well. I mean, there's nothing we really can say about that. That could happen and continue to happen. I struggle to see that there would be a player that Chelsea could sign that would be potentially better than Nkunku. Maybe
Nkunku good player.
Nkunku
good FPL
good, exactly.
Nkunku good.
Exactly. I'd have to be one hell of a player to dislodge him, I would suggest. But hopefully it wouldn't affect him too much.
Okay, Morgan Rogers. Pie chart up on the screen, as well as some FPRF data that you might have a talk through in a minute, just for anybody listening. Bit all over the place, the responses here, just quite varied, which kind of just reflects, I'm not too sure what his minutes are going to be. So again, for game week 1 only, we're looking at about a quarter of the 25% between 70 and 75, 16% between 76 and 80, 28% between 66 and 70, and 20% between 60 and 65. Just kind of a bit of a mixed bag. But I think at the same time, it reflects the fact that he's probably going to start, but he's probably not going to play the full game. Right? He's going to be, I don't know, 70s or something would be my kind of reflection for this week. Nkunku, by the way, just as a number I'd give, I think about high 70s would be reasonable for Nkunku, maybe even 80 for game week 1, and then just drop a bit harsh as we mentioned. But Rogers, I think 70s. Luke?
Yeah, just to give a number on Nkunku as well. I'll probably say, just because it's like Man City and it's very tiring, maybe I'd drop it a little bit, 77 or something, but it's definitely in that ballpark.
Yep.
Yeah, Rogers is a difficult one to look at because, when I was looking, I mean, you can see his FPRF there. It's obviously a lot of championship. He hasn't really managed a massive amount of games in the league, but obviously he's so young and he's developing. And I think he's one of these people that I think initially I saw reports anyway, he hasn't initially sort of caught the eye, and then Aston Villa have kind of spotted a bit of a talent in the middle. It was a little bit of a surprise. He certainly showed it towards the back end of last season, and in the friendlies, and the Villa fans are saying he's looking really, really good. So, everyone goes through this stage. No one really comes in at 16 and just starts smashing the minutes very often, unless they're like Wayne Rooney or someone like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should worry there. I mean, other things I know, it's 71.6 minutes per start. I think that's pretty good overall, especially when you're factoring in there is that development in there. That was last season, by the way. Last 4 average is 857 minutes, but we've already said he played 14 times in the Championship, or 14 starts and 13 starts in the last 2. So I think there's more I wasn't as sceptical as him until I looked at this. I thought, no, he's going to be fine. He's playing well. He doesn't really have that much competition. But the more I look at this thing, maybe I've overestimated his minutes, and maybe I can't expect him to play as many as I thought in my head. And then obviously Ramsey was out a lot of last season, and I think he's got a good chance of playing in his position. Or I know they can kind of both play, but Rodgers either plays kind of 10 or left, doesn't he? Maybe even up front at the beginning of the season if Watkins not there. But Ramsey last season anyway was touted as his replacement, on the one who should be playing in his spot. So he's now fit as well. So I don't know. I think like 69, 68 is where I'm about at. And I think that's what I think the majority are saying, aren't they? Between 60 and
Yeah.
60, is that? So I think
Yeah,
we probably agree there.
I think you did touch on one point there that, kind of has maybe a little bit more kind of Rogers curious, I suppose, in the fact that there isn't that much competition. There's Ramsey and maybe a new signing, right? But they don't have a new signing yet, and they aren't really linked
Do you
with
know when
anyone just
Buendia is
yet.
back?
I don't
Because
know.
Buendia plays
He
10,
was out
doesn't
for
he?
like,
He was out for the whole season as
I think he
well.
did his ACL, didn't he? So, but I don't know if he's actually really had a preseason. Yeah, if he was back, it would make me a little bit more skeptical again. I think personally, the main reason, to be honest, why I've been in any way curious to Rodgers is just I don't really like any of the mids that are less than 6.5. So, and he's just a bit cheaper than all the other ones that are at least somewhat decent.
And
Yeah.
better than a 4.5 probably as well.
Yeah,
Like, it's
exactly.
probably worth
Yeah,
it.
better than Harry Winks possibly. But even then, I might end up just going Harry Winks and saving the money, which I guess we'll get on to later. Yeah, spoiler: Harry Winks is in one of my teams. But yeah, I think a little bit of potential kind of 9 share is in there for this week as well. Watkins hasn't really had a preseason, so that does kind of improve both Rodgers' kind of EV for this week, but also his minutes potentially. If Watkins is managed at all, it could be him that gets subbed off towards the end of the game. If he starts, he could get subbed off for maybe Ramsey, and then Rodgers could push to 9. I don't know. I guess I'm just speculating, and realistically, it's more so what do you think over the next 8 weeks that really matters. I think we all agree Rodgers starts this weekend. But in 4 weeks' time, does he start? I'm not too sure. Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think that he will continue to start and play because of the way he's been performing and the noises around the club. But it is a bit of a whim, and that does rely on them not making any signings, right?
Yeah.
Which is the dangerous bit because they've just sold Diaby, haven't they?
Yeah.
I can't imagine they aren't looking at strengthening in some way. It's just whether that person would challenge him straight away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think. I mean, yeah, to go out on a limb again on the 9 thing, maybe he starts 9, but I would have thought Watkins will play, and like you say, probably just come off early, and maybe Rodgers fills in for 10 minutes or something. But
yeah, I think
just my thoughts.
Yeah, Rodgers okay. Like if you have him, he's not bad. Like I don't think it's a bad pick. It's just I'm probably not going to be there, but he's fine, I guess. And I think for this game week, in terms of a number, I think like mid-70s is reasonable for this week, just because of like Watkins kind of question marks and things like that. But generally, I think he's like a low to mid-60s kind of on average kind of X-Mins week to week. That's what I kind of think. And yeah, I'd be a little bit harsh on his minutes over the horizon too, because just don't really know what's going to happen in 2 months' time. If you're on an early wildcard, maybe, yeah. Yeah,
he's one to reassess, isn't he? When we see what he's happened in the first 3 weeks and the transfer window's closed, and we sort of get there, which doesn't help us now. But I know I agree with that. I think maybe game week 1 minutes relatively high, maybe 70, 75-ish, and then from then on, yeah, mid-60s probably sound about right.
Okay, yeah. Up next, no external other data other than the responses that were in there. Trent, again, game week 1. The reason I put him in there, I guess some question marks around, to be honest, whether he starts or not this week. Because he hasn't had a full preseason. I think he played he played about 70 minutes in the game on Sunday. But Bradley's played a lot of minutes in preseason and has done pretty well. Trent hasn't been around for preseason because of the Euros. Responses in here around Trent: 28% think he's between 76 and 80. 21% think he's 71 to 75. And 19% think he's between 81 and 85. So. And as well as that, most importantly, probably 17% think he's above 85 minutes. So generally, I think the consensus there is that he'll start from the feedback in here. I think he'll probably start. I'm a little bit kind of skeptical on whether he will this week. Yeah, Luke, what do you think?
I'm pleased to hear you say that because, well, I'm not pleased because he's sat in my team, but
he's in mine too. Yeah,
yeah. Maybe that's why, because we always think the worst. But I don't know. Bradley's just like.
He's just so good, isn't he? Yeah.
He's so good, and he's played a lot of pre-season. And I do wonder if they need to rush it, because Trent does have a history of picking up injuries in most seasons in some way, shape, or form. Like, I don't think there's any doubt that Trent would play over Bradley if they're both fit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt there. It's just that, does he need to rush him back? I'm also on something where I've got him in my team, so I think he's going to play. But I think that's probably a little bit high on the minutes. I would expect more like 66, 70. I feel like he probably still is in the phase of building them up, and he would come off. And I just think Bradley offers you a lot anyway tactically, like not even necessarily stamina. In Trent's struggling. I think that we might see that across the season. Unless he finds another way to incorporate both of them into the team, which is possible. I feel like you kind of having Bradley's energy for like the last 20, 30 minutes in games is probably quite a good thing,
Yeah.
I would say overall.
What I would say, to be fair, is like generally with Trent, if he starts this week, like you just buy him. Like even if you think his minutes are
Yeah, it's
low,
too good value, I
like
think.
even if you think his minutes are 65 this week, like if that's actually the amount of minutes that he'll play, you should just buy him, right? But if you don't think he's going to start, or you think that there's enough doubt there that maybe you don't go there, then I do think that's an area where maybe there's kind of that bit of risk that you can kind of tap into maybe. Going with a different line does mean that you don't have him anymore. You're not going to have him for weeks, right? You're not going to be selling anybody to buy him more than likely, unless you're on an early wildcard or something. So people on wildcard 4, maybe that's something that you could consider, I think. Maybe going without Trent, would I do that? I don't know, even myself, but I think it's something that you could look to do. I think he starts, but I'm not super confident, and I would not be surprised in any way at all if he didn't.
No, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
65, I've got him down with, and that's like maybe that's not even accounting for the fact that he might not start.
Yeah, exactly. If you think he starts, buy him. If you don't think he starts, then maybe don't. Right, that's kind of it. But in terms of how many minutes you set him on to, in the case that he starts, I don't know. I think if you think he starts, just buy him, and that's it.
One thing's for sure: if he gets injured again, I think Bradley's just going to go into everyone's team. Well, depending on how long he's out for.
Yeah. Bukayo Saka. Similar-ish reasons for putting him in there. Just around a smaller pre-season, and there was a bit of doubt around that. Mainly kind of like a week and a half ago, there was doubts there, and that's kind of reflected in the responses here. Like 31% think that he's going to play more than 85 minutes. I think it's lower than that personally. I'd be like high 70s or something, but I'm very, very confident that he's going to start and that he'll be in my team.
Yeah, he's in my team. I think he'll start 83.3 minutes per start last season. So people are thinking he's going to be higher than his season average there. I know he come off with knocks a lot, or 1 games of 1, so obviously that has an impact. But yeah, I'm with you. Probably a little bit less when it's sort of first proper game back.
Yep. I think again, if he starts, he's good, right? If he's playing, he's good. So,
completely.
Yes, Saka good.
Well, we're gonna want him from 2-3 foot onwards, aren't we? Really.
Yep.
So it's just like I can't see a world where I don't have him, especially when the game week 1 fixture's just really good.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Solanke, again, a little bit of doubt around game week 1. I don't think there's any doubt whether or not Solanke is their number 9 like for the season, but game week 1, some question marks there, so that's why I put him in. Responses in there seem to reflect that he's going to start. 35% thinking he's going to play between 76 and 80 minutes, which I think reflects that. I think he's probably going to start, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. I'm probably about as confident that he starts as I was Trent. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I didn't really have a particular read on the Solanke one, to be honest. And it's like he is a player I am strongly considering putting in my team. So that just put me off because I just didn't have that read. But then Adam English, who's obviously does Spurs predictions and stuff and knows his stuff, and I think Baker mentioned, he's in the chat as well. Baker, he's mentioned it on their pods and stuff that I've looked. And the noises from coming out from Ange sound like he's probably just going to go straight in. The fact the game's on Monday as well, he seemed really confident. So I probably will edge on the side that he is going to start.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, he hasn't had much for pre-season. He did get that slight knock. Now, was it a knock? No one. I don't want to be mistrusting of managers, but when there are sort of transfers going on, sometimes they protect players, don't they, and say it. So if there's anything in that as well, like why risk it? But the other thing is, I don't know how close Richarlison is to coming back. Actually, has he played any pre-season minutes at all? But
I don't think so.
I'm not sure he has he? But Kulusevski's played well in the 9. I guess maybe for game week 1, it's not a problem. But moving forwards, I don't necessarily think Solanke is going to be a full 90-minute man because I think that's just Richarlison's best position, and I know he gets a bad rep, but Richarlison I still think he's pretty
good at football.
At the role that he does. And why wouldn't you, when you've got 2 players to keep him happy, at least give him the odd minutes here or there? He's not going to start over him regularly, so he's got to give him sort of 10, 20 minutes there. And I think Solanke would actually... So, I mean, playing a number 9 for a Premier League team for 90 minutes week in, week out is tough, proper hard. Why wouldn't you give him that? So I don't think he's going to be a 90-minute man moving forward. That's my personal view. But I still think he's a great pick. It doesn't change that. And not many 9s are 90 minutes. Man.
No, I think he's good. I think if somebody had him, I wouldn't think it's like a bad pick or whatever. I won't own him, but again, that's not a reflection of him being bad. I think from Rob T's kind of spreads that he posts, I think the change wasn't really that much. I think the kind of improvement in overall team quality that he's playing for, and the chances there is kind of offset by 1 minutes and two, I guess, kind of goal share that he's just playing with better players who are going to do the goals. Also, the kind of question marks around penalties, and whether he has them or not. I mean, we're just guessing. It could be Son, it could be him. I think it's fairly close. If I was to guess, probably Solanke, but I don't know, just guessing. I know I mentioned a minute ago around kind of like Trent and Solanke. I view them similarly in terms of how likely they are to start. The difference for me and why I'm going to own Trent and probably not Solanke is because Trent's just like way better than any of the alternatives in similar kind of positions or price brackets. There's other strikers that are pretty good. There's not that many defenders that are anywhere close to as good as Trent when he's playing. So yeah, I think that's it. Unless you have anything else to add on
No,
Dom.
I'll go along with that.
Yeah, Solanke good. I probably won't own him though. Up next, oops, I'm missing one of the files. There we go. So
People in the chat as well, just saying that that blue tone guy's linked that Bob might have an injury. I just want to say on that blue tone guy, I know for a fact that guy he does guess a lot, make a lot of stuff up. But I think he's got someone who is in the club who will occasionally tell him some news. So he's not like a tier 1 ITK, I would just say. But, if he's putting that out there and saying he's had all this, there might be something in it. I'm not saying there's not anything in it, but I just wouldn't take that as gospel. And also, if Bob has got a big injury, rest assured Pep will tell you.
Yeah.
Because he does tell people when they have injuries and they're going to be out quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess we'll get to him later. Bob good when he's playing, but we don't know if he's going to play. Yeah. We might talk about it in a little while. Joao Pedro, game week 1 minutes. I think very popular pick. Joao Pedro very good at football. Takes pens. We think like almost definitely. Responses here relatively varied. Actually quite varied to be honest, because looking at the kind of green area here, the 28%, that's between 71 and 75, and then the orange one is between 60 and 65, which is a big enough difference. I reckon that some people, again, some may be thinking it's kind of an average throughout the season, but also I would agree with that number myself. I'd be in the kind of 60 to 65 for game week 1. He didn't have much of a preseason. I know he played the most recent game. And yeah, I think he's in their first 11, their strongest 11, but whether or not he's managed this week, we don't really know. New manager, some question marks there, uncertainty there. I'd be a little bit harsh on his mins. He's still amazing. He'll still probably be in my team, but I don't think there's any point this season that I'll have Joao Pedro at anything close to 75 minutes, unless like things change.
Yeah, see, I'm not so sure on that. But obviously, it was under De Zerbi, but De Zerbi's got the reputation of rotating. He was on 85 minutes per start last season, which is quite surprising. When I saw that was the most surprising stat that I saw actually when I was looking at mins per start. I had this perception that he was just a rotation, but essentially he just, as you can see from the FBref data, it's because he only started 19 games. So, that was more it. So I don't know. It seems like once he's on the pitch, he's at least fit enough to carry on. But there could be context there. Evan Ferguson spent a lot of time out injured. Welbeck spent a lot of time out injured. He might have not had many other options, and he's kept him on. I think there was a quote earlier in the week, anyway, from the manager who basically said that Pedro's going to be he's going to be judged on his counter pressing. That's what I saw. How much work and effort he's putting in off the ball. I know he's got a rep of being a very good player off the ball, but De Zerbi also called him out at the beginning of last season, saying he didn't work hard enough off of the ball. So the fact that the new manager also says that, like these managers talk to each other, right? They've all got scouting networks, they've all got coaches, they all know the players' profiles and what they're about. So clearly that I think they know the guy's got talent, they know the guy's got abilities, but that's an issue they need to work on him with. So yeah, I think as long as he continues to do that, I think he'll stay in the team. And if he doesn't do that, he'll be out of the team. And that's not something that's easily judgeable, right? Or that's down to him and how much effort he's put in. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. 2,305 minutes is his average over the last 4 seasons. You can see that's pretty good compared to a lot of the players we're looking at. That's not too bad. That includes, you can see there's jumps between his seasons, 19 starts last time, 31, 15, 31. It's almost like a bit of a pattern, but I don't think there's anything in that. So I think game week 1 is tricky just because of the fact he's had 45 minutes in pre-season. But beyond that, especially with the likes of, and Cisco's still out injured, isn't he? Who else could play number 10 in their team? Now, I'm sure they could make stuff happen. and move players in there. But at the moment, it does very much look like he's going to be the preferred number 10. There's not too much competition. They've just loaned out for Bayonette or whatever his name is, as well, who potentially could have played there.
Yeah, they are linked with a new signing who could play 10 / on the right.
Yeah, good player, right?
I think Joao Pedro probably plays, but I do think that there's at least enough uncertainty in there to not just be like, yeah, he plays all the time. I think that's kind of a little bit dangerous. Again, I'm probably going to own him, but I wouldn't be owning him in like a team that doesn't have a really deep bench and doesn't kind of have cover in there. I think he's amazing because he's just way too cheap, right? That's the thing. They just underpriced him horrifically. I think he's one of the few examples, to be honest, that were just like really badly priced and way too cheap. So I'll probably own him, but I think that there's a risk there, and he might not end up being as good of a pick as we hope. Similar to last season, I guess, in that sense, it could end up being like that, where he's still good, and when he plays, he's still really, really good. He still takes pens, and he'll still have a good season. It's just that
he just becomes not useful for FPL, doesn't he? If that's the case.
Yeah, and I think I do think it's just a little to be cautious. Let's say you have a team where Joao Pedro is going to start for me in game week 4, and that's the game where his EV's there, and he's going to have enough. He's going to have 3 weeks to get back into the swing of things, and then he's going to start game week 4, and I'm going to get all this juicy EV. I mean, that's risky play in my opinion, and not in the good risk. I think that's just dangerous play where it's like very fragile. All of the EV that I'm going to get from it is kind of stacked into 1 or 2 game weeks, because it could be that that's the 1 game week out of 7 that he doesn't play. And then you're screwed, right? And it just feels terrible. Again, I think he's really good, and I'll probably own him. But I just think to be kind of cautious there, if you have a really kind of shallow bench or something, just to be aware that, I mean, the game weeks where he looks really good, he might not play them, and he might play the game weeks where he doesn't look good.
I just think we have a tendency as people who watch football and watch the games to see a player that you can clearly see is very, very good.
Yeah, he's class.
And then we take it to that point of, well, how can the manager not play him and not use him and not play him? And then you look at the competition, you're like, Ferguson's injured, Welbeck, he's not. You don't think he's as good as he is. I think Welbeck's a very underrated player, by the way, but that's another conversation. But you see what I'm saying? It's like we almost then start to take it on the more positive side, and I'm also doing that. I do believe that he is going to be number 1 and play all the time, but I don't think there are any certainty, especially if that Gruder guy comes in. I think then you've got an issue, because he can play right wing, he can play 10, right, maybe false 9. I think we might see a world where he goes 10 and maybe Pedro ends up being the 9 over Welbeck. Like that would be fantastic if that happens. But there's just a lot of unknowns with him. So I think the first game week is a little risky. I think 60 minutes you might even just only see 60. And after then, I think it does start to go up, hopefully. But as to what that is, I'm not so sure on him. Like 70-ish is what I've got in my head. But
I agree with your sentiments pretty much entirely in terms of like he's their best player, he's going to play. Until we get to like the actual numbers, I'd just be lower. I wouldn't ever be like, on current information, nowhere throughout the horizon would I be putting him above 65, 66, 67. But we do have to consider as well that even if now we think, okay, he's going to be the player who starts, by the time we get to that point, when we're planning now, there's going to be decay in there, right? So let's say now we think, right, if you were to predict his minutes for the next 5 weeks, you're going to say 65 and then maybe 68 and then 72 and then 70, and he's going to play those minutes. Well, in my opinion, by the time we get to game week 3, when you said 70 minutes, I think that there's kind of just natural decay put in there when now he's down to 67 or something. So I think like generally whatever we kind of think his minutes are going to be in 4 weeks time, I think just like drop them by a little bit, again, in case we're wrong, I suppose, for one, but also just to account for the uncertainty in there, injuries or just changes, generally signings and things like that. But I do agree with all of your sentiments around. He's just their best player and he's going to play the games, in my opinion. I just think we need to be a little bit careful that that might not happen, and the manager might not necessarily agree with us.
Yeah, well, let's hope he's been working on his stamina, and he puts in that counter. He definitely needs to be putting in that counter pressure.
Yeah, I was there last season, game week 1, and it was painful, and I'm here again, ready to get hurt. But I'm ready again. He's very cheap, so it doesn't really matter, to be fair, too much. He's a good pick. Joao Pedro, good, very, very good, very good player. But just be careful, he might not start a couple games here or there. Okay, I can feel Simon's eyes kind of piercing through my skull right now on Minteh, because I know he's definitely going to own him. Unbelievable player. Yeah, crazy good player. So cold. His minutes, reflections here, and kind of the thoughts. 71 to 75, 30%, 76 to 80, 20%. Like, he's going to start. He's going to play a decent amount of minutes. Like, I don't think there's really much question there, to be honest. He's going to play. How much he's going to play, I don't know. How many minutes when he does play, I don't know. But I think he's going to start. Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't start at this point.
Yeah.
Given the pre-season money signed for, reputation.
Yeah.
Simon's also forced me to have him in my team as well, so I know exactly where I'm going if this all goes wrong. I mean, you look at the history. I mean, he's a kid ultimately. He is a proper kid. 18 and 19 is his ages between the two sort of times he's been in professional football, and he's managed 15 and 17 starts. You know, I think there was a massive upward trend towards the back end of that final season. The manager there was Slot, wasn't it, as well, where he's got a reputation for rotating all of his wingers and all of his attacking players. At least he did in that season. And I think I haven't checked it myself, but I've had people tell me that a lot of the attackers sort of averaged around 70 minutes because he just kept rotating them to keep them fit. So that gives me more warning signs for another player we might discuss later. But 69.9 minutes per start was his average. But like I say, that's quite low, but then it wasn't any different to any other wingers really playing. He only played 90 minutes, as far as I can tell, once.
Yeah.
At least in the Dutch league last season. Again, bit of a worry, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's just Slot. And yeah, I mean, 1,336 minutes over the 2 seasons as an average, but I don't think we can draw much from that. I just think start minutes probably pretty high. He's only really got Andriga, as far as I could tell at the moment, that could maybe play over him, unless anyone can tell me different in the chat. And, you know, you can go both ways. You're a kid, you're learning your trade, you're tired. Maybe they want other people on, or also he's just so fit and so young. Like, can he just play every minute if he was asked to play? I don't know. We don't know the answers there. Maybe we'll get that later. But I've currently got him, like, the default on review is 76, going to 71, 66, 61. I think that's fair. And that's where people seem to have him. I know it's a bit of a school round, but that sort of 71, 75 bracket's the most popular, isn't it? So.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd kind of say there, and you kind of alluded to it as well, but then he's in your team, so you obviously think he's going to play. But just kind of a thing that comes up a lot is, like, you mentioned, you know, he played 70 minutes every week, and that's a bit of a worry, right? So I'm just using that example. To me, I don't think that's a worry. We know he's going to play that, right? And he's going to play about that. That doesn't make him a risky pick. We know exactly what he's going to do, and I think if that's the case, right? If he plays 70 minutes when he starts, then the question is, does he start? And we set his minutes to 70, and we see if he's good, right? I don't think that makes him like a risky pick. I think like somebody, do we have anybody here? I think maybe Joao Pedro, just as an example. There's better examples, but he's somebody that maybe he doesn't play, and then that's an issue. I think Minteh just plays. Like, he just starts every game for the next 3 months, right?
I suppose it's because always in my head I'm thinking, I really want 90-minute men all the time, but it doesn't matter, right? If the EV's potentially that good at 70 minutes, then great, we take it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Again, like, if you're a little bit unsure, maybe we could drop his minutes a little bit when we're solving. I think, well, what if he comes off 5 minutes earlier every game or something, you know? But I don't think it makes him like a risky pick per se. I think he's just like really, really good, but his minutes are. I mean, it doesn't even make them low, in my opinion. It's just like, these are his minutes, and he's really good at those minutes.
I suppose the risk with Minteh really is just the fact that it's, you know, to the Premier League now. New manager, and the fixtures aren't all that, right? They're more the risks with Minteh than anything else, right? Because if the stats even close to translate, then we're on for a gem. But I mean, the chances of him being like sort of running at 0.8 XGI in the Premier League, he might be a fantastic player, but to reach anywhere close to that, that basically says he's Salah, which you know, that's going to be maybe in time, but straight off the bat, like, that's a big jump.
Yeah, I think, again, you mentioned it, the changing into the league, right? Obviously, massively wide error bars there just around anybody changing, especially somebody who's like in the 99th percentile of everything, right? So there is kind of scope that maybe he doesn't, you know, do that well in terms of performance. I think he will. But he would be one of the players kind of in that under 6.5 mil bracket that I'd be open to owning. I don't have any real question marks around his minutes. I think, about 70s, you know, low 70s, maybe 70 generally. I think he plays every game. It's just like, in his EV, there's a lot of uncertainty there generally, and I guess I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with that. That doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just that I guess it's probably a fault in the way that I approach the game at times. That kind of there's uncertainty in his EV, and I just don't really feel too comfortable kind of dealing with that.
The EV's not as high as I would expect it with a man of those numbers, right? So you have to kind of listen to that, like.
But the green bars are juicy, right? Like they're
they are. They go, bro. I look at them and I just get.
They do.
I hear Simon talk. He looks into my eyes. I check him on FBref, and that's all I need, man. I'm there.
Yeah.
So
he is one of those that you just kind of hear of him. You look him up on FUF, and it's just like.
I've never seen the guy play before outside YouTube clips, and I'm lauding him like he's the greatest player. Like I've got no clue. It's ridiculous.
He's good, I think. And he's definitely going to start. So yeah, if you think he's good, then buy him. If you think he's going to be really good when he plays, then buy him. So in terms of the actual players that I put into the poll myself, that's all of them. Again, huge thanks to all the responses. Well over 100 there, which is really, really nice. And I really appreciate it. I did have a little section at the end of that for people to kind of just fire in some names. And there was loads in there. Of course, we can't talk about every player in FPL, so we won't do that, but I've picked out some of the kind of common ones that I saw, and maybe we'll discuss some of them. I have some of the FBref data similar to what I've been showing for some of these players. Some of them I don't, and we'll just kind of share our own thoughts, I guess, and whether or not we're going to own them and what we think. So first one up here, as I just transition over, I won't be owning him, but I don't know, you might disagree. Jota, that was one that came up a lot. Any thoughts there, Luke?
Yeah, so I almost feel like I'm going to go to town on this pick now.
Ooh, nice. I'm here for it. I think he's a terrible pick, but go for it.
Yeah, I don't want to say that because he's easily a player that could, like who's that YouTuber or whatever? It's not that I'm putting myself in the same bracket, but that social media guy who writ off Haaland at the beginning of the season. He scored like
Rory something. Rory Jennings, is it? Yeah, that's it.
I don't know his name, but yeah. I mean, this could be my moment of doing the same. I don't know. It's just like I love Jota as a player. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good player. I just struggle with the fact that he always gets injured all the time. He gets injured all the time. There's Gakpo there. There's Nunez there. I know that maybe we could think Gakpo's going to play left wing and compete with Diaz, and maybe it's just Darwin and he's not ready. I don't have any doubts he starts game week 1. Mm-hmm. But even, looking through his history, for example, we've got it right up there on FBref, like, it's not often the guy has managed, in the last 5 seasons, he's only managed to get to 2,000 minutes or 2,300 minutes once, 1,100 in the other 4. Actually, there's a 0 in there as well, so that's not right, but it's still pretty low overall. When you look at the starts, 14, 12, 12 are 3 of the last 4. He has got a 27 in there. Mins per start anyway was 70.7. And then I go back to the other bit where I said at the beginning, like at Feyenoord, Slot has got a penchant for subbing his players. So competition good, reputation of subbing attackers, a player that averages 70.7 minutes per start anyway. Like all of that combined just makes me think that the guy's just, again, we discussed with Minteh, like the EV's there, it's there. But if he's getting sort of 60, 65 minutes and he's open to getting subbed all the time, I just don't really like it. I feel like it's a transfer waiting to happen. And even if he's, like this world exists where he is the guy's not, Slot's main number 9. He is going to start every game. The competition's not going to affect him too much. And then I just worry, well, will he even be able to stay fit? I don't want to book in any transfers, so it's just not for me. But he could easily do fantastic against Ipswich. And if he does carry on, I'll have egg on my face. And he could be one of the best picks in the game because his XGI is fantastic.
I think
I just can't do it.
Yeah, Jota's great at football, and when he's playing, he's really, really good. And if he played all the minutes, then he'll be a really good pick. I don't think from the information we have now, he's going to play all the minutes. So I think he's a bad pick. Maybe I'm not as nice as you or whatever, but I think he's a bad pick personally, like really bad.
Just not sitting on the fence as much as me, so that's You'll learn to do that as you do more.
Yeah, and I think he's a really bad pick. Not because I don't think he's going to score this week, because he probably will. I think he's like, he could end up scoring going crazy. Like, but again, that doesn't really matter. Even if I think he's just like nothing even injury related that much. Like, yeah, that's in there too, but it's just like we don't know who's going to play any week ever for them. Like, you don't know if he's going to play next week in game week 2 or 3 or 4 at any point, and then he could get injured. When he does play, he's great, but not for me.
Yeah, I was going to say something, but because I'm old, I've totally forgotten what it was, so move on.
Yeah, I think we kind of agree, right? But for the most part, again, I'm probably a little bit stricter on the way that I play in terms of that kind of thing personally. But and maybe I'm just meaner. But I think he's bad. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Again, when he plays, he's great, and he could have 5 goals in the first 3 games, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. But that doesn't mean that I'm gonna buy him now.
Well, I also think the vibe, like again, maybe it's just fans' noise and stuff. And I follow a lot of the Liverpool sort of fan account stuff, mainly because we want them. They leak team news all the time. That's basically the only reason I'm following them. But I think, especially after the Euros, right, all the noise was, Slot's Dutch and Gakpo had a fantastic Euros, and now it's his time to shine. He's probably going to be Slot's main man, right? Then there was all the noise started leaking of, he's contacted Darwin and he's told Darwin he's going to be his main man and he's number one and he's the guy that's going to be playing for them. And then, like, recently, like, Jota's been doing well in the friendlies, and then all I see is, like, Jota's brilliant. He's the best finisher at the club. Like, he's definitely, like, I don't know if this is just like a beware of fan situation. All of the history and data we've got on Jota shows us that he's not a player that plays a lot of minutes or is able to start a lot of games for whatever reason. And they haven't even changed any players in the squad so far. So you're really relying on a manager who has the history, again, I say, of rotating attackers to come in and say, I'm not going to do that. He's going to be my guy for him to be worth it for me. So I'm not prepared to risk it, but good luck to those who do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if he does play all the minutes, then he's amazing. Like, I just don't think it's the type of player I'd ever consider. Next, we have somebody who I would be willing to consider is Muniz for Fulham. And kind of some minutes questions came in around that at the end of the forums. I think we'd probably agree he just starts the games. But what minutes do we actually set him to? Does he play all the 90s? There's Jimenez there. There's, different kind of players in there. What have you got?
Yeah, the default's 75, 72, 70 for him, so 75 for game week 1. Again, he was a player that surprised me a bit. I had this sort of perception of him that he came off all the time, but 79.8 minutes per start. That's pretty good for forwards overall. That's like not bad. But I do think Jimenez was injured for a lot of that season. And we saw towards the back end of the season, Jimenez started playing a little bit more and he started to get subbed. And then also I think maybe even started one of the games in Muniz's bench. Maybe I got that wrong, but I feel like that happened.
Yeah.
The other thing that stands out with him is just when you just look at Muniz's history, he just looks like a player who's almost come from nowhere, doesn't he? I know he's still young.
He kind of did, yeah. He kind of did come out of nowhere.
Yeah, so he's gone from 25. Sorry, he's gone to 18. So 18 starts last season, 9, 2, 3, and 3.
Yeah.
The rest of the time. So I suppose it's more than capable. Like, players come and start and they do well, but he hasn't really shown that he's a player that has got at least the ability to play.
I think the lack of minutes in the past was just him. I'm not like he was just bad. I feel like
I
think he was just bad, and then all of a sudden he was like really good. I don't really know.
It does happen, doesn't it?
Yeah,
there are stories of it.
Yeah.
Like I think Ian Wright's famously one of the people that wasn't really noticed and just come from nowhere. And so I'm not saying that's not. He's certainly young enough, and he certainly showed that. When he started playing, he was able to it. But I still just think there's just too many unknowns around Muniz to the sense where I just don't know how good of a player he is yet. So it's not necessarily the minutes with him for me. It's more just I'm just not sure how much of a good player he is. But the fixtures are there, right? And his price is decent. Like I wouldn't put anyone off. I think he's an absolutely fine pick.
Yeah, no, I don't have any actual question marks around like ability personally. I think he's just fine. He's decent. I think he's okay, and he plays for a kind of bad team. Sorry, any Fulham fans. But yeah, he's still decent and he's cheap, so there's that. I think minutes I'd be like mid-70s and just kind of like a general decay of a minute or two every week, just kind of standard. I think he starts for them, and unless something massive changes, then he'll continue to start. And yeah, Jimenez will probably come on in most games, and that's kind of reflected in that kind of mid-70s for me.
I think he is asked to do a lot of work, and he seems like a busy player, and he's always running around. So I do feel like Jimenez will come on for 15, 20 minutes quite often.
100%. Yeah, I think he's fine. I think he's decent, and again, he's really cheap. So that helps. Compared to like maybe I don't know whether it was 6 mils Chris Wood and I guess Calvert-Lewin. I think he's slightly better than them, and that's what I think. He's okay. He's slightly better than the other 6 mil mids. So if I was to pick one, it would probably be him.
Forwards, yeah.
Yeah, forwards, yeah, excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, if Pedro and Armstrong were injured, then I'd have Muniz in my team, put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to go back here to both of our beautiful faces. And yeah, because that's it in terms of the actual data we're bringing. The next one up here was Oscar Bobb, which obviously is
Yeah.
up for debate. Now, I mean, if he's in, I guess like if he's injured, that sucks, and whatever, he's not going to play. If he's not injured, what do you think? If that's just nonsense, if it happens to turn out to be not true.
Well, people are saying that Main Roads tweeted it, so this is kind of live
No,
feedback. So I just
really?
went and clicked on his thing. Yeah, he hasn't said that, so let me just read it out. Just seen that Bob News has been leaked. I was waiting for confirmation, but he was seen on crutches today. I've taken him out of my FPL team. So someone said about breaking legs and stuff. I mean, that doesn't say that, right? We've got the famous Bruno Fernandes picture where he's laying on his sofa with the crutches. We've seen it numerous times before, so maybe it's not that bad. But if people are saying he's definitely on crutches, like, okay.
Yeah, then don't buy him.
Given he was already a risk and an issue, like, let's just not bother with that. And we'll see that Pep will probably come out in the press conference and tell us. That's what I would hope. But
yeah, I would ask. I guess if while we're here now, any thoughts on how that might kind of impact the lineups? I know you were on the page. You're on the stance of like Bob. Probably like almost definitely starts game week 1 and probably starts game week 2 as well, and then from there it was a bit up for debate. What do you think now?
Well, before them, I mean, we got two options really. We've got Bernardo Silva going back to the right wing like he was doing before, which allows Foden and De Bruyne to be more central. I mean, that might be just the obvious go-to at this point.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most likely. And then the other one is obviously Savinho's a talent who's been touted as being the right winger who can do a more similar role to Bob, I would suggest, rather than Silva. So it's going to come down to, does Pep think he's ready and can he put him in? Which I suppose we're just not going to know because we've just got no information on that, right? It doesn't matter if you're me, anyone else who's good at guessing, or just any layman person just looking at it. Like, how can you know whether Savinho is going to come in and make an impact straight away? You can't unless you're involved with the club, right? So I mean, it's probably going to be one of those two. And at the moment, you'd have to say Bernardo Silva was favourite unless Pep tells us different.
Yeah, and I guess just to ask as well, any change on your view of Gvardiol maybe? Like, does that change anything? I know you'd said he's probably going to go back to slightly more just kind of standard left-back role.
No, I don't think the right wing really changes in that scenario. No, not really. I mean, maybe like longer term with Bernardo Silva moving into midfield and stuff, it could have some effect. But I mean, also there's Doku, right? Doku can play right. I left him out a minute ago, but if Grealish is back fit, there's no reason why you can't go Grealish and Doku on both wings. And Doku was actually signed as a right winger, I believe. He's played there numerous times. So actually, I retract that. I think that could be like clearly against Ipswich. If Grealish is back, you could use Doku and Grealish and then bring Savinho on. I wouldn't be surprised by that. But no, I don't think it changes Guardiola.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I know that there'll be questions in there that'll come up over the next hour if this as this news kind of comes out. People will be wondering that. So Bob good for game week 1 if he's not injured, but if he's injured, then that's a shame because he's an exciting player, and hopefully he's all right. Quanza for Liverpool. He's in a lot of teams, a lot of drafts. I think Liverpool are good. Their defense is good, I think, and I think they'll keep a good amount of clean sheets. And I think their defenders that play are good. Personally, there's almost 0% chance I'll own him. I think he'll start this week, and I think him and Van Dijk is the kind of the two centre halves for Liverpool. I think they're the two best centre halves for Liverpool, but I think that there's a lot of kind of Konate's just bad. He can't play with the ball and stuff. He's a brilliant defender, right? Like, and I think kind of people have been a little bit dismissive of his kind of potential to just play games. And I'm very confident Quanza starts this week. And maybe if it was on like a wildcard 4, I'd be open to owning him. But anything other than that, I wouldn't. Maybe it's a play style thing. Again, a lot of really good managers own him, and you might have opinions that are different to mine. But I don't think that there's any world where I'd own him. The difference between maybe Quanza and like the cheaper mids that are Mins risks, maybe like a Rodgers or some of the 5.5s that we're not too sure of that are a bit risky. The difference there for me is that there are other 4.5 defenders that I can buy in the structures that I'm kind of looking at and things like that. I could get, I don't know, Van de Ven or whatever, just another 4.5. There's lots of them for all the teams, right? There's loads of them, and I could buy one of them. There's not really for mids. Also, as well as that, and I kind of mentioned this earlier on when we were talking about Minteh, and you mentioned about the worry where he has 70 mins, and I said that doesn't make him a risk because we know he's going to start. Quanza, if he starts, he's playing 90 minutes. He's just going to play, but there's a decent chance. Like, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that in a month he just doesn't play October or November in the league. That could happen, right? And then you're kind of in a bit of a tricky spot. So that's why I wouldn't go there. Similar to like Gabriel, who I shared my thoughts on as well, but I would just buy the other 6 mil defender. So yeah, that's what I think on Quanza. Anything from you, Luke?
Oh, I think he did great. I mean, it's just this fans thing. I get the fact that he's a better player on the ball, and fans want to see him there, and he's the younger. But at the end of the day, we don't 100% know that that's what Slot
Yeah,
wants. He hasn't really had the opportunity to. I know he played one game and he was a bit iffy in the friendly, as the reports. I'm with you. I don't have any doubt Quanza will start the season. I mean, Canate is just like he's a French international. He's starting for centre back for France in some games and stuff like that. I don't think you just write him off. I think the manager will
yeah,
want to take a look at him and yeah, I think it shouldn't be a problem, right? He's 4.5, and like you say, starts or doesn't play probably for things. So I think he's fine. But I just prefer other 4.5s. I think using a Liverpool slot on him when they've got like Trent and you've got like Salah and maybe you want to risk Jota or more likely Allison, I would go for than one of those others. I think he's fine. It's just not for me. I just don't really want to. I just don't think the EV's there. I don't think he's got particularly any threat either or anything. Like I don't know. I'm wrong on that because I know the EV's actually good compared to the other 4.5s when you look at it, but um, I don't know what it is. I just don't want to risk it. I don't like having that second centre back that might or might not play. It just doesn't feel worth it to me.
yeah. Yeah, agree 100%. I think he's, I think he's a really good player. He's kind of that, but like again, it's like that kind of silky player that looks great because he's much easier on the eye than Kanate, for example, or whatever. And again,
Mm.
and I think as well the kind of on the Liverpool played two friendlies on Sunday, and the first of those kind of had a team that looked like more of kind of like a full strength team, like an A team and a not so A team or whatever in the second game, and he started beside Van Dijk, but then Van Dijk hasn't had a preseason, so Konate and Quanza have been playing all the games. I just think that there is a decent amount of uncertainty there. Again, I think Quanza starts game week 1. If I was on an early wild card like 4, I would be completely fine with going Quanza actually. But anything after that, it just wouldn't
Well,
be for me.
it's also, I mean, the competition there is decent again, right? And managers we know, like, they want to do this horses for courses thing. So just because Quanta's better on the ball, like, does it mean that there won't be games out there where Kanate's better suited and the manager will give him a go? We're not
Yeah,
talking about a complete dud here.
yeah.
Like, maybe I'm doing too pessimistic. Like, if you're on wild card 5, 6, 4, I think he's a fine pick. I'd maybe be tempted, but yeah, it's just
Yeah, I
not
think
for me.
yeah, I think we kind of our views kind of align there. He's decent, and I don't think he's like bad if you own him. He's just not a pick for me at all. I don't think he's that great, but I don't think he's like a bad pick like I thought Jota was, for example. I just don't think he's like a really really good pick.
Mm.
I think that was kind of it in terms of the main players that were coming up. We saw some stuff around. I saw some stuff kind of coming in around like players returning from, like a shorter preseason. Maybe they're at the Euros or things like that. I think my opinion on that is just like be a little bit harsher on their mins in game week 1. Right, like if you're not too sure, like Saka and like Trent, the players we discussed, drop them ins a little bit. But if they're like just the players that play all the minutes, then it's fine. If you think they're going to start game week 1, then they're fine. Generally, I think just buy the players who are definitely going to start games. That's kind of how I think about it, and I think it's important not to get too kind of stressed about do I put them on 74 or 72. And if I put them on 71, then they don't show up. That probably is a sign that we just shouldn't go there. Like if they need to have a certain amount of minutes to be decent, then just avoid them. I know I spoke about I spoke about similar things with JC last week on the pod. But yeah, I think just be harsher on bins generally. And if they're still showing up, they're good bloody players, and you should buy them.
Yeah. I think we also fall into the trap of thinking that, like, a player that's safer has got less potential to explode and do well, and it's not always the
Yeah,
case.
exactly. Yeah,
It's not always the case. Like, just because Bob's like very cheap and obviously going to be crazy value, for example, if he was fit and playing, like his XGI is fine, but there's players that are comparable. It doesn't mean that he's definitely going to score 2 or 3 goals just because he turns up. So
yeah,
you could pick another player who,
yeah.
maybe would just play and has got good data as well and could actually return as well. Like it's
Going.
never a guarantee. In fact, quite often the players like the Jotas, you bring in the Mahrez for the Man City fixture where he's got a good game. It's like it's not just the minutes that they just don't happen to perform in that one game as well. It happens all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll look in terms of the minutes again. Really appreciate the kind of input in there. And I let me know what you think, if it kind of went well or maybe not so well, or how we could maybe work on that. I was just kind of trying something out. I thought it might be a decent idea to kind of get, I guess, engagement from you guys as well. It's nice to do that. I'm going to bring up 2 drafts. These are to be honest, these are the 2 that I'm looking at for the most part. I mean, there could be tiny changes in there, which I might mention, but yeah, these are my 2 kind of current drafts that I'm looking at. First one here for anybody listening, if Flecken and Voldemort in as the 2 keepers. Trent, Saliba, Porro as the starting defenders, and we have Dunk and Wout Face. Again, bench order, just ignore that. Midfield, Nkunku, Bruno, Eze, Saka and Salah, and then as a striker is Joao Pedro, Isak, and Muniz. So this is a Salah draft that I'm potentially looking at. I don't really have anything to say. Obviously, I think it's a good team because I mean, this is the team I picked. Again, maybe something to mention that might be different. People like, the Gabriel versus Saliba. I won't kind of mention that again, but yeah, Muniz you see in there, a player we talked about earlier on, and Joao Pedro, again, definitely a risky player, but I think he's just like way too cheap for what he actually is. Any thoughts on that, Luke?
I mean, it's what I'd expected from you. Like, it's proper solid, like all very good picks, all of them are going to play.
Yeah.
The only, like we've touched on, the only players really you've got maybe some concern in that stretch is like Pedro a little bit longer term, maybe Nkunku can start getting injured and stuff. But you start to get into the place where like you're stretching there, and that's a massive stretch. Like the rest of the obviously Eze could be the transfer window. That's another one I could throw in there. I mean, Salah was even mentioned for that, right? But I don't think that's happening anymore.
Something I guess we should mention, just because there's a 4.0 in there. Is there any you'd pick? Personally, I wouldn't ever buy Barco. I know he's like really, really highly owned. I would never ever own him. I don't think he's a great pick. But any thoughts on a 4.0? Would you go for him? I don't think he's terrible, but.
No, I mean, I'm different there. I think Barco's a good pick, and but I'm wildcard 5, right? Whereas you're not. Yeah. So I think that's the difference there. I'm happy to chance it, but otherwise, I would probably have Face as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I just threw someone in. It could be Harwood Bellis or whatever. They're terrible. Just somebody.
They've got better fixtures to begin, but I don't have any confidence in Southampton. I think.
To be honest, when it comes to the 4.0 and the 4.5, even Dunk in there, I would just let the EV decide that for me. I'm not going to spend time kind of worrying about the rotations of which 4.5 rotates best in. It's like if a solver likes Quanza, then I'll get him. If it likes Dunk, I'll get him. Yeah. But Barco, just not somebody I'd be too comfortable with I think he's good, by the way. Like, I think he's a good player, but again, I'm just a loser who doesn't like to live and doesn't enjoy anything at all, just pure pain and misery. But,
I never would have guessed. You got you got 6 attackers there on the pitch on penalties, probably all good minutes. You got Nkunku might be centre for at least very advanced positions, and then all of your defenders have either extreme clean sheet potential in the likes of Saliba, or at least very extreme attacking potential in the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Like, I can't fault it. Like, it's fine.
I guess we're missing one thing, right, which is Erling Haaland, who we'll get on to now. Obviously a bit problematic, and I think this Haaland draft more likely one that I'd go for. So again, for anybody listening, we have the same 2 keepers, Flecken and Voldemort. Then we have Trent, Porro, Van de Ven, Dunk, and Quanza. So 3 4.5s in there. Exactly who those 4.5s are, again, I wouldn't stress too much about it. Van de Ven showed up with some solves for me, so he's in. But yeah, I think that would probably be the back 5. Then midfield is Nkunku, Bruno, Eze, Saka, and this time good old Harry Winks. And then up front we have Joao Pedro, Isak, and Erling Haaland. I guess one thing I'd mention in terms of the kind of small potential for change here, and one thing that I'm still kind of debating on this team, is potentially dropping one of the 4.5s to a 4.0 and then getting Rodgers instead of Winks. Something I'm considering. But again, there's that kind of uncertainty around that.
Yeah, I think I'd do that. I do Dunk to Barker and then Winks to, now Rodgers instead of Bob. But that but that's like schematics. Like, Dunk could easily just be a better pick, and both Dunk and Winks just will play, won't they? Whereas the other ones, you're not 100% sure on either Barker or Rodgers long term. So on a person who's trying to hold transfers and extend that wildcard time out, then it makes more sense to do it the way you've done it. And again, it's pretty much the same team, isn't it? Really, I just can't.
Yeah, like if the deadline was right now, this is the team I go with for sure. Like this one here, 100%. Like, the Salah one I am still considering. I think it could be something I look to do, but I think if deadline was now, it would be this, and it would be with Winks in there instead of Rodgers. I'm kind of to and fro, but I'm probably like 70% likely to just go with Winks, not because Winks is good, but because I would probably say that again, it's that combination of 2. I think Winks and Dunk is better than Barco and whatever Rodgers, mainly because I think Dunk is probably better than Rodgers, is what I would imagine. In terms of like EV right now, Rodgers looks great, but maybe in 6 weeks' time that isn't the case. But I know exactly what I'm going to get from Dunk, unless he gets injured. But like, injuries are always bad, so I'm not thinking too much for that. I know what to get from Dunk. He's going to play every single game. Again, you could apply this to Quanza, for example, or whatever. But yeah, I know he's going to play every single game. And I had a discussion with somebody earlier on in the week with Lorx from the analytics Discord, who mentioned like around, an 8th attacker is probably better than a fifth defender, and I agree with that, but I don't think that it's like a massive difference. So for example, that idea of, if I had Harwood Bellis in this team and Rodgers, having that Rodgers in there could be better, because if one of my attackers get injured, their EV in a completely average week, like a bad attacker is probably going to be better than a defender with a bad fixture. I don't know. I'm kind of waffling a bit, to be honest. To be honest, I just think that they're fine. Yeah, I'm just talking nonsense. But yeah, I think his team's.
I know
good.
what you're trying to say. No,
I think his team's good because I picked it. So yeah, it definitely is the best team that you could pick right now. Maybe it'll change.
You will die on that hill.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Mel in the chat saying 15-15. Marku like number one Hall of Fame possibly, or very close. Before you read what he says, I haven't even seen it, but I know like he's not something that I would ever listen to. So what was that he said? He says the team's arse, basically. That's the summary.
Yeah, exactly. Case in point. Case in point. No idea what he's talking about, but Mel, really respectable gentleman, distinguished in analytics servers, and really, really good at FPL, and likely to get a lot of points this season, unless I change my mind before Friday, and then he has no idea what he's talking about. And Mark, who's the one who's good. I think that covers everything. Anything major from your differences, like players you've got? I know we don't have a draft for you because you're lazy.
No,
but yeah.
Yeah, I'll just take that on the chin. Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I'll say is this is probably the team I should go with. So, I think this is be close to the analytics template if you are being extremely risk averse. So therefore, it's probably the right thing to do. But my team doesn't look like that. I mean, it's got a lot of the same picks, same front line: Saka, Eze, Nkunku, maybe Trent, Porro. Like
no Bruno.
A lot of the names.
Boo.
No Bruno, but that's a personal thing that's going to come back to haunt me. I'm sure.
It's really immature.
Yeah, really. It is immature. Yeah, it's basically downgrading Bruno to put a little bit more money else places. That's pretty much the only difference.
Yeah. But, have you got any have you got any 6 mil defenders? Gabriel, maybe.
Maybe Gvardiol. Okay. I think, but maybe not.
Yeah. Team good. And what keepers are you going with? Do you think? Obviously, it'll depend on your overall team, but
it won't be Flecken.
Okay.
That's like that. But
so it's a bad one.
Yeah, so it's the worst one on paper. It'll be Henderson probably.
Okay,
I'm thinking about doing Henderson in cells just because again it's game week 6.
I think they have better fixtures earlier on, don't they? Like I think Brentford's fixtures are like kind of bad. Yeah, they are to start.
They rotate really well for the first 5 weeks, but I mean honestly, rotating goalkeepers I should grow up because it just never works. So
no, I don't see an issue with it. I think it's fine. I think it's good. I think it's fine. Again, cells if I have no idea about Forest keeper situation, but apparently Jack Gaughan, is he any good? He has said that Bob has indeed fractured his leg. No idea who that is, to be honest.
Okay. Well, yeah, he's a Man City reporter, so
he's reliable, is he? Okay, so that's a shame.
That is a real shame. It seems to happen to players a lot, right? When they're about to just come down.
And
maybe it's just the ones you notice, but it's like Nkunku's a similar thing, right? It's like a lot of hype and then he gets a big injury. It just seems to happen a lot to players.
Yeah, life is just terrible, isn't it, really? To be honest.
It really does suck.
Yeah.
Just as all the stars align for him to play. Jesus Christ.
A bit like my FPL team, right?
Yeah.
The stars align.
Get it off the screen. It's making me sick.
Yeah, I will actually do that. I think that covers everything. I think, they pick the players who are going to play the games and hope for the best. Just hope to get lucky, really. Would be my opinion. If you're on an early wildcard like you, room for a little bit more kind of uncertainty in one sense, but so long as you're aware of that, it's fine. I don't see an issue with it.
Some sexy uncertainness, and then some raging in Discord later. Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah, we can just blame Simon when Minteh doesn't do well.
Oh, that's nailed on, like 100%. He's taking the fall on that. Let me tell you.
But we can just kind of bring up the FBRF data you went through earlier when he does well, and then we can take the credit.
Yeah, there you go. You've played this game before.
Yeah. All right, I think that kind of covers everything. We won't ramble on anymore. But hopefully that was enjoyable. Again, thanks so much for the input with the X-Men stuff. I'll probably do it going forward. Won't be as many players because again, game week 1 is the most players to talk about.
We won't have that many relevant players.
Realistically, there's like every month there's like 6 players to talk about, right? At any point. We'll probably do it from time to time, maybe 1 or 2 players per week or even less. Maybe we won't do it some weeks. But again, thanks a million. Really, really helpful and hopefully insightful for you guys. And if not, then whatever.
We don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's fine. Just don't come back. All right.
See you later.
Peace.